proportional response. Book 1. Chapter 8, Part 6, Negotiation. Galen breathed a sigh of relief as the exultant council guard finally turned to leave, trying to salvage their dignity by marching away in good order. The human colonel barked an order, and his soldiers slung their weapons over their backs while Henry talked to Credal and the colonel began speaking into a comms device. Galen couldn't hear Henry's conversation, but it didn't last long. He watched a bewildered-looking Credal follow the exultant female deeper into the embassy as Henry walked over to him with his hand extended. He took the offered hand and tried to squeeze. Henry returned the squeeze with exactly the same pressure, and he had to marvel again at the human. Another group of humans came in carrying a Zoltan body, and the colonel spoke.
"That's the last of them. The Zoltan's got the rest. Let's get these doors closed, but everyone stay sharp. We may see more trouble before this day is done."
Galen and Henry took a seat at the table as the doors closed. Henry waited until a light came on in the table's center before he spoke.
"Good. The privacy field is now active. Thank you for coming so quickly after all of the excitement. You don't seem to have taken any injury. I hope my men didn't manhandle you too much."
Galen leaned back and smiled as Henry poured them both a drink.
"Oh no, your men behaved impeccably. They demonstrated great valiance, honor, and as much courtesy as the situation allowed. The one you put in charge of them particularly impressed me, by the way, when my own guards wanted to go out and join the fighting."
Henry raised his glass and nodded.
"He reported the matter to me, and I thank you for your words. We were concerned by the fact that not all of them made it back alive."
He put his glass down and leveled a hard look at him.
"I do wish you had kept them inside, however."
He felt the feathers on his crown stand up, and Henry made a placating gesture.
"I do not doubt Themir can courage, Ambassador, nor their prowess. Please understand. It is that everything is very delicate right now. We are trying to set the stage for the coming conflict, and to stack the deck as hard as we can. Anyone going off script could complicate matters."
Galen nodded and forced his feathers down.
"I understand. Surely though, with all your planning..."
Henry waved his hand.
"No harm done, truly. In fact, it may give us some grist to use in the mill later. I just want you to understand that there is a lot you aren't being told. Not out of a lack of trust, but for simple matters of operational security. And, before you bristle at me again, please consider all of the things that we haven't asked."
The question caused Galen to start, then nodded in both acknowledgement and consideration for Henry's tact. He knows that they left the decision for his next question up to me weeks ago, and that I've been the holdout. How much of my being here to witness the events with the now former Master-at-Arms was happenstance, and how much orchestrated because I said I wanted them to prove that they would stand up for all sapient life? He replied before the silence began to stretch thin.
"You make a fair point. I have wondered why you haven't asked more about a number of matters. I assumed that you already knew. Your intelligence gathering sometimes seems nothing short of magic. Still, your point is well made."
He made a sweeping gesture with his hand.
"Enough on that then. I thank you for the use of your men, and hope that you will convey my respect and warmest regards to each of them. In the meantime, I believe we have matters to discuss."
Henry nodded.
"You said you've had enough time to confer with your government in light of today's events. I trust they are more amenable to our proposals now."
There it is. Look at the corners of his eyes. Yes, he knows.
"Indeed. I do believe you and your people have put your money where your mouth is, to use a phrase of yours."
They both chuckled and took a sip of their drinks. He liked the way it burned slightly. Even their booze has strength and character.
"For the most part, we find your proposal acceptable, if somewhat astonishing. You truly want Themercans serving on your military vessels?"
Henry nodded.
"Yes. We have already recruited every willing man and woman we have to serve in our military, and will be continuing to recruit more. We also expect a good many more to become willing to sign up when the shooting starts. Currently, we do have more sailors than we have ships, but that won't last long at our current rate of production. Furthermore, if this turns into a protracted shooting war, we could run out of fighting men and women before it is over, even if we go to conscription. Your people, however, have more people than you need to fill all of your ships, and the best part is that you have both battle-tested veterans and new recruits who could fill out some of our ranks nicely."
He narrowed his eyes and nodded at Henry, settling into the meat of their negotiation.
And those veterans come to our first point of concern. Our officers will not be willing to join your military as enlisted ratings. It just won't do.
Henry shook his head and held up a hand.
There appears to be a misunderstanding of a sort. There is only one way to enter our military, as an enlisted. Every member of the Confederated Armed Forces goes through what we call basic training, or boot camp, the same. After that initial basic training, they go through a second basic training that is specific to their branch of service. We don't need your people for ground forces, so all of yours will be going to the Navy boot camp. This we will ask all of your people who are coming to serve on human ships. Don't feel singled out by this. We will be asking the same of the Arabso and of every other species we have asked to serve on human ships. If you will allow me to explain in some detail, if a human wants to become an officer, they have to serve as enlisted for a period of time, which varies by branch of service, and accumulate enough points for doing their job well, and have recommendation of an existing officer. Then they get sent to one of our officer academies, which is kind of like going through boot camp again, but this time with more emphasis on academics and classwork. Any of your officers who volunteer to join us will be expected to go through boot camp right alongside humans, Arabso, and whomever else is willing to send us people. Everyone in that boot camp receives the same temporary rank, recruit or E0, if you are more inclined to the numerical designations. We will take them in batches, and the boot camp will be modified where needed to make allowances for physiology of the various species. Make no mistake, we will be asking the same of every person who signs on to crew our ship. It is after this boot camp that the experience of your veterans will differ from that of new recruits. Once they are out of basic, their rank from your military will be reinstated. Your enlisted people will then be set to an abbreviated training to teach them how our ships differ from yours. Then they will be assigned. Your officers will be sent to an abbreviated officer training with the same goal. It will have some additional training on how to deal with crews of various species, and whatever we have for trying to deal with mixed species crews. Please note that your vets will enjoy all of the privileges of their ranks for that second leg of training, and we will pay them at their previous pay grade through the entire course of their training.
Gallon nodded and took a moment to gather his thoughts before he spoke.
I think I understand your proposal better now. We do have our own forms of basic training which have similarities to yours, and I can't help but take some small umbrage at the fact that you seem to be calling ours inferior, but...
Henry waved his hand.
Oh no, not inferior at all. Please understand, we are offering to send a few of our ratings and officers to your military and police forces as well, partly as a token gesture, and partly to foster better cooperation. We fully expect for you to send them through your own basic training, and will be forwarding you some information on ways it might be best to adjust that training to deal with human physiology. For instance, the humans should not be allowed nearly as much sleep as their Thermacan counterparts, but will not be able to climb with near the alacrity of your people.
Galen stroked the cartilage peak of his lower lip and nodded.
And basic training is a major source of esprit de corps for both our militaries, so having our people go through it with yours and others will further the goal of making a more cohesive fighting force.
Henry gave a broad smile.
Yes, that, and there is a lot of information in that training about how our military works, not all of it implanted in obvious fashion.
He raised a hand in a placating gesture.
I believe we can settle that point then. It seems your proposal was not quite what our admirals believed. It will take some heavy convincing on my end, but I think we can get a limited buy-in. Understand that I won't be able to get my military to order people to join you. Please don't try. We want volunteers from your men, and volunteers only. Our entire military works on that principle. Very good. To the next item of concern, and it is one you already touched on, the matter of pay for the men who come over to you. You have offered to maintain their pay grades in Council Standard Coin. However, our observation of your officers and the wealth they seem to have suggests that the pay rates for your military are higher than ours.
He let the statement dangle, hoping that Henry would take the hint. Henry shook his head.
I can see how your people might come to that conclusion, but it is not exactly true. Our economic system is a bit different from all of the rest of you, which is why we don't use CSC very much inside Confederated space. The problem is that we moved to a heavily automated economy decades ago, which means that Confederated credits do indeed have a lot of purchasing power in human space. However, once you move outside of human space, The exchange between CC and CSCs is not favorable to us, to say the least. The rate of pay we are giving for each grade is actually higher, if converted at current exchange rates, than what we give our own people. Still, if our people are serving on your ships, most of their purchases will likely be from human space, correct? Possibly. How about this as a compromise? We will give your people 2 options, with the opportunity to switch between options every few months. They can take their pay as currently outlined, or they can take their pay in CCS.
Garen stroked his lip cartilage again and considered.
What about a third, blended option? They get most of their pay in council money, but some extra in your credits.
Henry nodded.
I think that could be arranged. I'll have to hand it to the accountants and let them come up with a compromise. That should work out well. I appreciate that this will make something of a nightmare for your accountants. Yes, they are probably going to be upset with me, as will the programmers, but they'll work it out. Now, on to the next item.